Before we begin, a little bit of quick context. In the year 2000, when Wizards of the Coast made the D20 system for their 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons, they made something called the Open Games License, or the OGL. This allowed for third parties to make their own games and game material using the D20 system. They could use everything in Dungeons & Dragons, but not the copyrighted material. So you couldn't use Beholders, for example. This was both the greatest and worst thing that came with the 3rd edition D&D, as it opened the floodgates. Everyone could use the D20 system without needing to pay or to do paperwork for the license, which also brought with it tons of cheap cash grabs. And at first sight, isn't that exactly what this game seems like? A quick biblical paintover of another game, like how Super 3D Noah's Ark is just a reskin of Wolfenstein 3D. No. This is made by Scott Benny. Who? Oh, just a man who got into D&D all the way back in 1977 and loved it so much he started contributing to it in 81 through the Dragon magazine and was hired as a freelancer at TSR in 83 and continued to work for TSR for a decade until he left in 1992. He worked on adventure modules and game supplements for Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, and Ravenloft. And loved RPGs so much that D&D simply just wasn't enough. So he also worked on Call of Cthulhu, Champions, Traveler, Marvel Superheroes, RuneQuest, and both of the Warcraft RPGs. And that wasn't nearly enough for the man. After leaving TSR, he went to work at Interplay on their Lord of the Rings and Star Trek games. But his biggest and most famous contribution was easily being a game designer on the original Fallout. And of course, as a pious man, not only was he a teacher for a good portion of his life, but he led a Bible study group at his local church. And to make this story even more bizarre, this game came out the same year, in 2003, when Scott Benny co-authored the Two Towers sourcebook for the 2002 The Lord of the Rings D6 Coda RPG. And this thing was published by freaking Green Ronin, which is a very notable indie RPG creator and publisher. They made the Warhammer Fantasy 2nd Edition, which is still to this day hailed as one of the best editions of Warhammer Fantasy by many. I mean, Thieves' World, based on the book series of the same name. DC Adventures, the DC superhero RPG, a year before the New 52. The Dragon Age RPG, right after Awakening was made. The A Sword of Ice and Fire RPG, 2 years before the Game of Thrones TV show. They also made the only good 3rd edition pirate RPG, Skull and Bones. These guys let this dude make a goddamn Bible game! Oh, please excuse my blasphemy. I think it's commanded by the laws of awesomeness that you have to play Striper's whole Second Coming remake album on loop while reading this book. But without further ado, Testament, role-playing in the biblical era.
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side!
Wait, yo! A soldier under God's command. Help fight the good fight. Join up while you can.
Important note though, this isn't a review or anything in depth. I'm just skimming through the book and pointing out some interesting or funny things. First of all, this game has multiple different settings you can play in. Israel, Egypt, Babylonia, and Mesopotamia. So you have Israelites, Egyptians, Babylonians, and Canaanites. Which is why there's 4 different sets of classes and B-series. Wait, hold the fuck up. One of the classes is the Champion of Israel. And it can prestige into becoming a prophet? Oh, I gotta fucking read this. Your job as a prophet is to be the moral compass of the Israelites, and you have received great holy power from God himself to fight as one of his paladins. Well, fuck all the other classes, I know what I'm playing.
I kick ass for the Lord!
And you might suffer a mild case of insanity. I'm not touching that one. As a prophet, you can have better dreams? You can know when someone has sinned, and you get the power of true resurrection! You can play as Jesus!
Mormon Jesus, savior of the planet Earth, would be Mormon Jesus.
Okay, wrong Jesus. Funnily enough, there's no Jesus in the game. He's only ever mentioned exactly once in the entirety of the book, and it's in the introduction. And I mean, it makes sense as the game takes place during the biblical era, so thousands of years before Jesus was born. And besides, you know, if they put Jesus in the game, the very first thing people would do was to go kill him. But joke's on them, he automatically casts a 3-day delayed true resurrection spell. Speaking of spells and great feats, there are some quite interesting ones in here. Starting with feats. Divine Recall allows you to regain all your spells for praying on the holy ground. Fertility Dancer allows you to dance for seductive and religious purposes. Omen Reader allows you to interpret divine omens in dreams. Slave Holder makes your slaves very loyal to you. And a ton of curses allows you to speak powerful curses, meaning the ones you get banned for using on Twitch and YouTube. But onto spells. We are immediately starting off with a good one. The very first cleric spell is Challenge of the Lord.
By God's light, I smite you!
It's not as cool as it sounds though. It just allows you to duel people and you gain boons for winning the duels. Bards can use their natural attractiveness to raise someone's confidence so much that they permanently gain a charisma increase. They can also curse people. Not the way you and I do to piss people off, but the magical kind that makes you shit out your organs. Clerics can open portals to hell, speed up pregnancy, to make someone start giving birth instantly, and curse people. But not the way bards do, where they just curse a single person with something. No, clerics can curse a person's entire family for 4 entire generations. And if that wasn't hardcore enough, clerics can also bring an unholy, blighted rain of blood that makes land infertile, poisons the water, and lowers morale. I think that being unable to eat or drink without dying would already lower morale. But hey, you gotta be sure to make sure your enemies demoralize, right? Clerics can also return someone to their prime, which just makes me think if it's possible to attain immortality by just having 2 clerics cast a spell every decade or so on each other. Clerics can also have new spell domains. Of course, Heaven Domain, obvious. Pestilence Domain, a domain of the gods of suffering and death. Okay. Desert Domain, which deals with the true desert.
I really like sand. It's soft and smooth and comforting, and it gets everywhere.
Then there's the Domain of Fertility, which covers personal and animal fertility. Yeah, I'm not reading more of that. Moving on to the next class, the Quedashot, which in English means the Holy Ones, who are temple prostitutes in the religion of fertility, a subclass of cleric and bard, because of fucking course it is, who performs religious acts with foreplay. God damn it. They can heal people by kissing them, increase someone's fertility, turn water to wine, cure impotence, cure a woman's infertility, create and destroy true love, speed up pregnancy the same way clerics can, and kiss someone to death! Fuck, a literal kiss of death! And if that wasn't funny, they can dance to make someone lose all their armor, defensive buffs, and magical protections. And of course, they can cure all STDs. I honestly didn't know. I honestly didn't know what I was expecting. Sorcerers and wizards share their spell list, and the very first one is creating bricks. You just know that instead of actually building anything with the spell, players would just make bricks to do this shit all day. Sorcerers and wizards can also magically cause people pain by just giving the people handshakes. They can control someone's true emotions and damage their bodies by speaking the true name, which they can also just force someone to tell them. And they can create a window through any solid matter that they can cast spells and fire missiles through, that they can also be mirrored, so only the caster's side can see through it. So in classic fashion, this class is made to fuck with people. Not in the Bard way, but in the Bugs Bunny way.
Boom, you stupid rabbit! Like this!
Moving on to magic items. And there isn't much of a selection, to be honest, and the only one of note is this serpent, a weapon that when dropped turns into a viper. So you can just do the Moses thing then. Monsters. And there are a lot of expected thens. Animals, angels, demons, elementals. Surprisingly standard fare with other fantasy monsters. A sin dragon? Okay, this is amazing and we're checking it out immediately. Okay, so according to this absolutely accurate adaptation of the Old Testament, the Sin Dragon is a monster that Moses beat the shit out of so he could part the Red Sea and allow the Jews to escape. It's unknown if he actually used the power of God or a Beyblade to part the Red Sea, however. Anyway, the Sin Dragon is a lawful evil being that preys on sinners. Shocking. Making them to do his bidding out of fear and greed, using them as servants and as guardians. They sometimes pretend to be gods just so there will be less pious people in the world. And just like other dragons, they also hoard valuables, but Sin Dragons specifically hoard holy items. There are two types of Sin Dragons: the traditional dragon kind that can fly, and the kind that live in the sea and don't have wings. The kind that Moses beat the shit out of. Sin Dragons are more dangerous the more sinful you are, as they literally deal more damage to you if you are sinful. But if you are a very pious person, even if its breath weapon, which is unholy fire, won't do much to you. You can literally have a moment where the Sin Dragon does its big move to kill you and evaporates everything in the room, but you're just standing there completely fine. And the Sin Dragon shouts, "Who the fuck are you alive?"
Jesus, man.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. But if you're not a badass biblical monster slayer like Moses, you are actually in pretty serious danger. Even being exposed to the unholy fire forces the player to make a piety check to not get constant possession attempts for demons for the next 1 to 4 days. Anyone hit with the unholy fire must make a save to not instantly gain 1 to 4 negative levels. Meaning that not only can you permanently lose levels, you can die if they go below 1.
Jesus, man.
They also have a variety of spells they can do to slow you down. Dispel magic and even instantly detect if you're lying. But the Sin Dragon has a massive weakness. Good people. Literally. Get this. If you are a good person, a pious person, and you want to instantly destroy a Sin Dragon, you can. You actually can. You just need to have an angel or god come to you in a dream or cast a divination spell to tell you the ingredients you need to destroy the specific Sin Dragon you're facing. It even mentions that Daniel, from the book of Daniel, feeds cakes to a Sin Dragon baked from fat and hair, which makes it violently explode from the inside. What the fuck is a sea goat? And why is it classified as a colossal magical beast that has its terrain be land and underground? And why is it so strong it could kick the ass of a fucking beholder? Shamer? What? A diminutive aberration that was the last creation of God. It's a worm the size of a barley corn that is a creature of great importance because a bird uses it to crack mountains so it could plant seeds in the cracks. Moving on, piety. It essentially just boils down into a morality system that gives you buffs and debuffs. You gain piety by doing good deeds, but you lose it by committing sins. You can be cursed for just committing a handful of sins. There are also some specific kinds of piety checks that can have pretty big effects, like entering heaven or hell. Yeah, you can go to both. And if you fail your piety check, you can be paralyzed for a short time. And if you fail a check while looking at God's body without permission, you will become feeble-minded, which is a nice way of putting that. The list of sins is mostly pretty predictable stuff. Treason, murder, theft, lying, adultery, incest, etc., etc. But there are a couple of odd ones. like defaulting on work owed to the state, diverting the flow of the Nile River, and military desertion, which just seems like normal crimes to me and not sins. Malicious gossiping? So gossiping is perfectly allowed as long as you're not being mean about it. But that's all gossiping is. Insulting a kin. Trimming one's beard at corners. How are these sins? Murder of a kid. Interrupting a kid. Sitting at the kid's throne. Approaching the kid's concubines. Tattooing self. So, is it okay if I get someone else to make a tattoo for me? Casting any spells that are arcane, mind-affecting, raising the dead, has a positive effect with demons and foreign gods. Those do make sense. What doesn't, though, is that casting a divine spell is somehow a sin. You are literally using the power of God! Gay sex! Okay, that one was to be expected. Having sex with a woman on their period. What? It's understandable, but why? If you are menstruated, you must remedy it for 7 days, or you are committing a sin. What does this even mean? If a dog pisses or shits in the house, you must bathe and have a lit incense candle, or it's a sin? What? Wearing wool clothing.
That ain't right.
Fucking what? How? Okay, how is that a sin? Wool clothing is the best kind of clothing. Someone died in your house, and it's your sin. It doesn't matter how or why they died. So I can just commit Sudoku in someone's house and they get in trouble for it with God? Childbirth is an unclean act, and having a daughter is worth twice the sin. There are mass combat rules?
In God we trust, trust.
The game does have a dozen or so biblical characters in it though, with their own stat blocks. And all of them are just fucking crazy. Moses alone is strong enough to 1v1 most of the entire bestiary. Funny than this, since this book uses the 3rd edition D&D rules, it wouldn't be difficult to convert this to your system of choice. But I think that's all I have to say, to be honest. So
Woman time.
What in God's name is going on here?